So this is going to be the last video lesson. It's part 3 of the last set of notes. This one deals with a quadratic formula. Here's the quadratic formula, and it looks rather complicated. I'm not going to ask you to memorize it. I will always give it to you on the tests or the quizzes that you will take. And I know there are many acronyms and phonetical ways of memorizing it. I'm not going to ask you to do that yet. You'll probably have to memorize it when you take Algebra 2, but for right now, as long as you can use the quadratic formula, I will be happy with that. So the quadratic formula has a bunch of letters in there. It's got a B, an A, and a C. So they're the only unknowns. So where do we find these B's, these A's, and the C's? Well, if you remember the standard form of a quadratic function, it looks just like this. You have x squared plus x plus something else, and in front of the x squared you will find your a. In front of the middle term, the x, you will find your b, and the last term, the one that's all by itself, is where you will find the c. So the first thing you need to do in the quadratic equation is find your a, find your b, find your c. So for example, if I were to give you a problem like this, so a problem like that, and then I asked you to find the a, for you to find the b, and then to find the c. So that's the first thing. Find your roots. Great. So the a is always whatever's in front of the x squared. Well, what's in front of this x squared here? It appears like there's nothing, but remember, there's always a hidden 1 that we just don't write. So the a in this case is a 1. What about the b? What's in front of the middle term, the x? Well, we have this right here. And don't forget about the sign. The sign goes along with the coefficient. So the b in this case is a -6. What's c? Well, the c is that last term. It's all by itself. It doesn't have an x or any other variable attached to it. So in this case, our c is right here. It's the 3. Now that you have these 3 numbers, all you need to do is plug them into the quadratic function and just solve it. I know it sounds like a very complicated thing to do, but it's actually not so bad. So let's look at a different problem, and we'll find the A's, the B's, and the C's. We'll plug them in, and we'll actually work it out. So let's look at this problem right here. So it's a pretty simple quadratic function, -x squared plus 3x minus 1. The first thing we need to do is we need to identify the A, we need to identify the B, and then we need to identify the C. Well, the a is always whatever's in front of the x squared. In front of the x squared, it's just a negative, and if there is no actual value, there is always a 1 as well. So it's a -1. The b is whatever is in front of the middle term, the x. So what's in front of the middle term here? Well, it's just a +3. And the c is whatever is by itself, whatever is just without an x or a variable. And that's our c in this case. So the c is going to be a -1 too. So the a and the c in this case are the same thing. Alright, so now that we have that, what's our next step? Well, the next step is to plug everything into our quadratic equation and see what the outcome is. So the first thing is the b. It's a negative, and then the b value. Well, the b value here is a 3, so we plug that in. Then we have a plus minus, the square root symbol. Underneath the square root symbol we have a b squared, so we're going to say 3 squared. Then it's going to be a minus 4ac, so minus 4 times our a, which is a -1. And then also times the c term, which is also -1. Perfect. And then at the bottom we have 2 times a, which is our -1. Alright, so now we plugged everything in. All that's left to do is crunch our numbers. So over here, negative times a 3, it's just a -3. That's going to be 3 squared, which is a 9, minus -4 times -1, that's a +4, times -1, becomes a negative 4 again. Down here, 2 times negative 1 is just a negative 2. Alright. 9 minus 4 is a 5. And on the bottom we have a negative 2. And we are going to go ahead and cancel out the negative on the top and the bottom, so we're going to essentially factor out a negative from the top and the bottom. So x is going to end up being equal to 3 plus minus root of 5 all over 2. And that's your final solution. Two outcomes, 3 plus root 5 over 2 and 3 minus root 5 over 2. You can write them as a combo like that if you want, as long as you understand that they are two separate possibilities. So that's essentially how you work out quadratic functions. Identify A, identify B, identify C. So A is whatever is in front of the first term, usually the x squared. B is whatever is in front of the middle term, usually an x. And C is whatever the term all by itself. And then plug them into your quadratic function into the spaces provided. So the B goes here and here, and A goes here and here, and the C goes only in one place. And then just crunch your numbers and cancel anything out, simplify anything that you can. If there's anything to factor, factor it out. Once you can't factor anything else out, it's in its simplest form. That is your solution. So I'm going to do a homework video in just a little bit that's going to cover the homework that's attached to the last set of notes. It's going to be